started. Welcome, everybody. For those of you in person, thanks for joining us. Feel free to grab some snacks and some drinks. And for everybody on Zoom, welcome as well. We are here to talk today about artificial intelligence, the convergence of artificial intelligence and neuroscience, neurotechnology. Today we have with us our speaker, Eros. Is it Marcello or Marcello?
Yes, Eros Marcello.
Marcello. Welcome, Eros, for joining us. Thank you so much. Eros has been a partner with ETI for, the past couple of quarters now? And by the way, I should have said, I am Zach Semblin. I am the Dean of the STEM division, which ETI is under, the Emerging Technologies Institute. And Eros is a guru in artificial intelligence, does a lot of amazing things out there in the industry, and we have been very fortunate enough to have Eros be part of our team here at Foothill as a visiting scholar the last couple of quarters. So he has graciously agreed to give this talk here today. He will be presenting his slides, but if you do have questions, I will help facilitate. It is intended to be a conversational type of discussion here today, so please raise your hand and volunteer when you have a moment. A little bit on Eros. He's seasoned artificial intelligence and machine learning design engineer, currently working on AI native neurotech applications. Quite interesting. He has over 8 years experience in the industry, specializing in human augmentative AI. Eros designs advanced technologies such as intelligent voice assistants, generative AI chatbots, and multimodal apps. His expertise encompasses conversational and generative AI with vested interests in quantum machine learning and neuromorphic engineering. We'll have to hear more about what that is. Eros has worked on AI for Apple, Meta, Salesforce, Samsung, as well as multiple initiatives for the federal government. He currently consults on various projects and works on open source projects via his Black Dream AI imprint out of NASA Ames Research Park, and is the co-founder of a TBA stealth neurotech startup, Lumina AI. And if you'd like to learn more about Eros, there is a link on our ETI website, linktr.ee. Linktree, if you will. So please visit the ETI website, and I can also post that in the chat if you'd like to learn more about Eros. So having said all that, we welcome Eros, and it's all yours from here, Eros. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. So the TB announced, the to-be announced startup is Lumina AI, and it's in very much in stealth still, and we're in no hurry to actually come out of stealth. This is what Black Dream AI, or Black Dream Research as it's been renamed, is enabling and eventually going to be absorbed into after we see what's what with a couple of open source projects. But for right now, I consult through Black Dream AI. I just wrapped up a multimodal AI project for Pfizer, consulting for Pfizer. Prior to that, we've had some contracts with Farmers Insurance for your run-of-the-mill conversational AI and generative AI, now generative AI native conversational AI. So this new company, there's going to be, there's limited information, but I wanted to present the tricklings of what we're doing thus far, what we've accomplished. So we're constructing a God view for your brain, and what this means, if you're unfamiliar with the term, is it's a when you build an app and have all-encompassing, everybody say? Yeah. Okay. All-encompassing, God view is a software term that where you can essentially see all the goings-on of your app, whether that's within the ethical or unethical, executed in the ethical or unethical realm, because that's the premise of what we're trying to do. So there's a lot of where this idea came from was there are a lot of high resolution neural imaging procedures and techniques that tend to live in research. They're in academic institutions and research facilities across the planet, really out of reach for a lot of the end user, and that's on the side of academia, large-scale academia, where you have that papers are produced, patents are written, and then the cycle continues. So this Limina represents our team is divided down the middle between those connected with academia and of the neuroscience community there, and then you have the folks on the AI ML and generative AI end in the Silicon Valley model, so to speak, which is where I hail from. So we're a study in contrast, but we're also a sort of a harmonious alignment at the same time. And we are based at NASA Ames Research Park. We are exploring avenues to even deepen our relationship with NASA there as we speak. And it's your quintessential Silicon Valley situation. We're currently out of a house, and it's a sort of a bucket list item for me. So let's move into the deck. So the brain, our problem statement is the brain is the most complex organ, and we not only understand it least of all of our anatomy, but our access to its data is scarce and hard to come by, even when we pay for it, even when insurance covers it. You're going off of what you're interfacing with your. You can go to a neurologist and get an MRI and get an MRI, a radiology report, but as far as leveraging that raw data that comes from that, it's a pretty archaic process. Even at places like Stanford Neurology, you have to manually sequester them for your data. It comes on a CD-ROM, so if you're dealing with any type of contemporary modern day tech, which we all are, then you have to source an optical drive. Then you have to download a DICOM reader. You have to learn how to use a DICOM reader, and then you have to teach yourself, in my case, how to read your own radiology scans, which encompasses fundamental knowledge, fundamental neuroscience and neurological domain expertise, which I had to sort of crash course myself in, and am fortunate enough to be very connected with the neurotech community, given our partners especially, who are our leading neuroscientists. So I am spoiled in that regard. Coming from AI/ML, you tend to have a crude understanding of fundamental basic neurology and neuroscience and neurological goings on, as far as the structural, the brain structure. Neural networks are loose abstractions of human neurology. Neuromorphic is a more granular to scale approach to computation that mirrors how the human brain processes things, particularly in parallel. So this is the problem. And where this came from was me being diagnosed with everything under the sun. And it wasn't so much a mental health journey as it's usually put. It was, I don't even like to describe it that way. It was more so a really aggressive discovery process of and recoiling at a lot of Western medicine and its broken systems, healthcare, insurance, trying to find specific answers that had a little to no margin of error, and continually coming up and hitting roadblocks with these sort of catch-22s of, I noticed trends. And again, I've worked for GlaxoSmithKline on their IBM Watson initiative. I did the Amazon Alexa skill for Cigna in the 2010s. I've consulted for CVS Aetna during their merger. And I've seen the healthcare system and medical systems, and they're largely broken. Then you have academia, that academic element, which of course is a necessity, but then there's red tape that comes with that, and bureaucracy that's introduced that way too. And it really, at the end of the day, there's so much innovation and so little of it gets to the everyday person. So this is a remedy to that. So we want to solve this while shipping deliverable intermediaries. And I've taken that phrasing's jacked from comma AI, but it is true to what we're doing. So our solution is a Gen AI native utility application that ingests, aggregates, and analyzes your neurophysiological data to offer granular insights and real-time observation, ability to observe your neurophysiological and neurological goings on. So everything from your electrical activity, your receptor activity, down to the neuromacular integrity of your brain, and over the course of a protracted period of time, hopefully being able to calibrate its age and health, being able to observe perturbations in your neurochemical structuring and firing. That's the idea, and we're trying to see if we can do this with a native generative AI solution. We're hardware agnostic, so the idea is to also leverage neuro-adjacent data via all the self-tracking we have, the Oura Ring, Apple Watch, and all your wearables, along with consumer-grade dry brain-computer interfaces like the Neurosity Crown, and then you have more research-oriented stuff like OpenBCI, which we're also exploring to see if dry EEG is a little bit of a misnomer given the signal to noise ratio and certain quality issues. You have different head structures and electrode array placements. So there's a lot of dispute and debate as to the quality of it and how actionable that data is, but that's what we're exploring, and that's yet another use case generative AI really shines, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But essentially, to go back to what I was saying about where this idea came from, you have psychiatry, which is the only it's the only field of medicine that refuses at scale to look at the organ that they're treating. And there's folks like the Amen clinics, the folks at the Amen, there's already people trying to tackle that problem. That again is still very, very few and far between. Where it's really, if you look at the insights you can glean from something like a SPECT scan, to derive certain conclusions, or for precision neuromedicine or precision medicine in general, for mental illness, for instance, the fact that that's not done in a uniform manner and applied universally across medicine is insane. This guesswork that is modern psychiatry has done arguably a lot more damage than good, and there's plenty of doctor-created diseases and illnesses, to the point where it's sort of trendy now to say, in noticing this, because what we've uncovered through this journey is that I'm currently undergoing testing for ASD, and why I'm even telling you guys that is we're kind of coming to this conclusion that that's the case, and autism is much different than schizophrenia, much different than psychosis, much different than major depression and anxiety disorders, much different than bipolar disorder. Yet I was misdiagnosed potentially all of those things, and unfortunately, due to radical self-awareness and gut instinct, I didn't adhere to the heavy amounts of psychoactive and psychotropic medications let's call them what they are, mind-altering substances, that I would have taken all of these years for all of these ailments that I didn't have. That were sort of I was diagnosed in these kind of fleeting these circumstantial trends. In the 2000s, everyone was ADD. So we were all given amphetamines. I wasn't, but we were given. I decided not to take them at that time. But so everyone was given amphetamines. Then, conveniently, in the 2010s, everyone was manic. Surprise, surprise. So everyone was bipolar. So let's put everybody on mood stabilizers. Now everybody's schizoaffective. So I've noticed in the 2020s. So let's give everybody antipsychotics. And here we are. Doctor-created illnesses. So the true what came out of this, Richard Branson, and I'm paraphrasing his motto is why start. To paraphrase, why start a company unless it's out of complete and utter disgust? And that's what I came across, because in pushing back to the physicians about, I don't really think I have bipolar disorder. We're really round peg and square hole in here. No, there's scans. You can see them. You can see it in brain scans. And if you know the medical institutions the medical systems and institutions I insisted on aligning with myself, still saying like, well, if I go to the best and the biggest named hospital, the biggest named medical institution, that's going to give me better chances. So I make a good living and I have good insurance, I should be fine, is most people's impression, and it's just not true. So I'm bi-coastal, so I'm connected to Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida. Stanford is my PCP here, Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles, and NYU in the Northeast. And I continually just went from dead end to dead end to dead end. In the case of the doctor being like, well, there's brain scans that can prove bipolar is real and that people have it. I'm like, Cedars-Sinai is right down the street. Let's go get it. Well, and then that's where you get that answer. Well, you get those platitudes. Well, that's really hard to come. Then insurance has to approve it, and that's sort of the justification's not there. So it's all spin at the end of the day. And when you come with someone the beauty of this is that I'm a college dropout. I am self-taught in everything I know, and that's why it's sort of scattered across the board. And when you tell someone who doesn't understand the nuances of medical research, and these glass ceilings that are purposely put in place and moats that are specifically dug around certain areas, like, for example, Almond Clinics, which is the leading provider of SPECT scans. If you have $5,500 burning a hole in your pocket, and so it's still out of reach for a lot of folks, unfortunately, but not as much, not to the degree it used to be. If you hear his TED Talks, because Dr. Almond is the founder, he was told when he started looking at brain scans, staying by the neurology community, like, stay in your lane. You're a psychiatrist. You don't need to look at the scans, which, like, just listen to how insane. Look at egotism disservicing the whole premise of medicine, like in just open display, which to me is the most egregious thing, because the answer is, like, if people only had, the answer doesn't solve knowing why doesn't necessarily solve the ailment, especially when it comes to mental health, but it certainly can open up possibilities to treatment, to recourse to self-service. And I think that, given that our brain is arguably our most important organ, because that's how we perceive reality itself, in our state and our circumstances, then this can't just be another battle cry. Everyone says mental health month and mental health day, and my mental health is real. Yes, we know it's real. Now we need to make it actionable. We need to create a solution. We need to create a bridge between this guesswork psychiatry and what we're experiencing, whether it's from the food, whether it's from environment, from substances that are inherent in food, or an amalgamation of many different things. We at least need a fighting chance and a utility, an actionable, real tool that allows us to access neural data, make sense of it, in a way that we can do something about it, and educate ourselves. And I think that needs to be distilled and put in the hands of everybody. I think we all deserve unparalleled, untethered, and uninhibited access to our neural data and to the understanding of it. So that's what our solution imposes. It's a web app, and it's going to be a web and mobile app with an AI layer, in the sense that we're going to have a built-in assistant. We are exploring different models to use that in. So there's different modalities. So if you're doing this, you're going to be able to upload your neural data, and I have a demo at the ready using my whole plan with this was to open source all of my neurophysiological and medical data. And that's another barrier, because you don't really come across that as often, to the degree that it's something that's commonplace, where people just open up. People want to kind of traffic in privacy, And that is understandable, but that also hinders research and development into these things because there's so much red tape. You have HIPAA and privacy and ethical compliances. So I went in out of pocket, got all of these procedures done, SPECT, functional MRI. I acquired multiple brain-computer interfaces and figured out a cadenced regimen of monitoring my neural states in different real-world scenarios, rested and active. I took the liberty to do all this, and we're using my data, my SPECT data and MRI data and neurology reports to build and architect this product. So this is a proof of concept. So yes, we're going to have an AI assistant built in, and we're doing the Amazon Alexa approach, where before we were actually building out the platform itself, the traditional graphic user interface, we're seeing how much we can execute on in a user experience sense with an LLM interface. So the same way Amazon came out first with Echo Dot, where it was just voice, that was for use case establishment, because then they decided, okay, well, we're gonna add, we're gonna make the Echo Show, we're gonna make the Echo Spot, we're gonna use screens, we're gonna have different modalities to interact with our intelligent agent and create the optimal experience was the intention. So that's where we're taking a page from that book and doing that ourselves. So this was actually for the Neurosity Crown Neuro Hackathon at AGI House in San Francisco. So we spent all weekend hacking in a mansion on a cliff. So I'm really glad. It's an awesome place. I totally recommend you follow them because they're bringing the hackathon culture back to Silicon Valley into the Bay Area. And that's really exciting, especially that everything died post-COVID. This is my second time living up here from 2017. And 2017 was, we were still in the glory epoch of your classic. It was like a kid in a candy store situation. So I'd work at Samsung on Bixby during the day, and then you'd have an event at decision trees at Twitter or simultaneous localization and mapping at Uber, fed like a pig, open sushi bars and what have you. And then we went to go work on the Hyperloop at our lab outside of Facebook Building 8. That's what that was like the first time. So moving back up here for Apple in 2022, having Apple move me back up here, seeing it all dead was really hard, because that was why I was so excited about coming back up, and everything was either virtual or shuttered. So this was what I built in 48 hours in a hackathon. You have working object character recognition. GPT-4o just rolled out that night. So I got to, and we were having issues with the lab streaming layer for the Neurosity Crown SDK. So this actually was able to read and decipher, and this was totally like, I hope this works. And because of that model update, without any type of neuroscientific prompting or training, GPT-4o, just out of the box, was able to make deductions and decipher screenshots of brainwave data from the Neurosity console. So that was our workaround. So I'm going to show the demo. So hopefully you guys start getting an idea of what the user experience is like. So this is a chat interface, so there's no voice. So just take a gander. And we've rebranded to Limit, but this was when it was called Ouija. Can everybody see the text? We can't see the text?
Can't really read it. I mean, if you look on the screen, you can see it better.
Hang on, let me see if I can see something. This is a great video, by the way, this podcast. Let me see. I can maybe make it a little bigger. Go straight to YouTube. Anybody see better?
Yeah, it's bigger. Yeah.
Okay. showcasing a chatbot and a hackathon is like the most anticlimactic thing you could possibly do. I did it because it's my thing. This is all using my actual neural data in real time. This is a live recorded demo, built in 48 hours. And if I'm being honest, 24 hours. 24 hours, you know, rubbing shoulders and trading campfire stories, and then the other 24 hours working. So that's a picture of my active state spec scan from Almond Clinics. So it's noticing the recessed blood flow in my right frontal cortex that's inherent in the scan, and it's also identifying the scalloping in the spec scan without any explicit training. So this is essentially a personal knowledge management tool for your biosignatures. In this case, your neural biosignature, your neuro biosignatures. So the idea is it ingests the data that you upload and varying modalities. So you're going to see right now that I'm uploading JSON data. Yes.
So could my doctor be given enough information to take a scan of the exact same part of my brain as your scan was, and we can compare them?
That's the idea, is that really the sky is the limit given the open domain functionality of what LLMs offer. But that's the idea, is that you can establish a baseline and then you monitor over a course of time, and the model, the LLM can compare and contrast. So like in your case, if you got, like I have a guided state rested fMRI that was meant for targeting a specific area has me prone to anxiety in my frontal cortex, and then it determines that. See, so right here, a distinct pattern of hyperactivity in your EEG recordings, and then it makes comparisons with the spec scan and whatever other data you've built out with it.
So the radiologists have the skill to communicate. Your radiologist could tell my radiologist, take the picture right here, and they could hit the same area?
Well, this has nothing to do with, this isn't a tool that a doctor interfaces with at all. You can export the data.
Radiologist, so it's taking the picture.
Right.
So could your radiologist tell my radiologist exactly where to take the picture so we have comparable scans?
Can my radiologist, like my human radiologist?
Yeah, tell my radiologist where to take the scan.
Well, it's different. It's different it really depends on the use case or what you're trying to do. For example, my guided state fMRI was commissioned by Acacia Clinics, which has a specific, we were doing transcranial magnetic stimulation, and they were trying it out for anxiety as opposed to depression, which it's usually prescribed for. So I don't think that the doctors are going to talk to each other. It's more so you upload as much data as you have, and then build out. It builds out that's the whole idea of building out a God view of your brain. We are currently experimenting with. We technically fall under we fall under the subfield of brain emulation, although we're not trying to I guess we are. We're trying to computationally create a picture of your brain, not in a visual sense, but more in an informatic sense. So the idea is that we're going to establish which procedures you need and partner with these clinics. So as we roll this out, it's going to be localized. So it's probably we're going to launch this in the Bay Area, and it's going to be a white glove app. So it's going to be about probably a $10,000 process at first. The idea, we're testing it in the sense that this is gonna be sort of solving a rich person problem in the sense that like, I want all of my physiological data, like how home automation and high resolution neural imaging was. It's a very expensive, these are very expensive to attain and keep track of, and prior to wearables democratizing, you know, vital self-tracking, to do that, you needed some real equipment. So the idea is that you can use your self-tracking wearables and then conjoin that information with historical data from your, you know, all these, pretty much every modern PCP and general practitioner is using some sort of like online portal, and you can export your data or upload data to it seamlessly. So you can, the idea is that you export your general medical data, you use your wearables or consumer grade neural interfaces like the Neurosity Crown, and then you also go with our partner facilities and attain these scans. And then we're trying to calibrate the secret sauce of what is enough as far as neural imaging and procedures mixed with self-tracking. Like what will give you enough information to actually provide value actually provide insights and enable something like an LLM to make deductions like, wow, you have, you know, your thalamus is active in your rested state, SPECT scan more so, in my case, more so than your active state. That's something to look into. That could be, you know, you need more selenium, you need to supplement selenium. We're still in discovery and research, so we have to see what data types we need and how much of them to properly inform the model so that I can make that type of determination and distinction right now. So that's where we are. Get out and back into the deck here. So these are the data types we're currently using. So we have my genealogical data that's sourced from 23andMe and Ancestry. We have neurology reports from Stanford. We have the EEG, which is all self-tracking, with the Neurosity Crown, which is an 8-channel dry electrode 256-bit device. We have my structural MRIs through QBio, which is another procedure I did, which is it's I think the most thorough medical exam currently available to the general populace. Measures up to, I think, 3 billion biomarkers. So it's blood work mixed with a full body MRI, all in a portal. So it's a more generalized version of what we're doing. This is neuro-specific. And then you have vitals and activity self-tracking. So you have your health wearables, your Fitbits, your watches, your rings, etc. And these are the components to our MVP. So you have the natural language interface, which I just showed you. Ideally, we'd like to be able to even hot swap different models, but it's not even going to be. The more I think about it, it's not even going to be necessary, because the ultimate idea is to assess the failure ratio, the failure points of SOTA models like GPT-4o. And ultimately, the value is in making a bespoke neuroscientific model that's either a small language model or a multimodal foundation model even. Zach?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, there's a question in the chat about how private is the data?
Oh, the data will have your quintessential HIPAA compliance and encryption. So it'll be all. That's why we're trafficking in edge and on device ML, and trying to do as much as we can in the small data and small language model domain, because that affords a lot of options for federated execution. So it's going to be as private as any other medical device, though we're not medical or health, because then that goes into where we're spending a lot of our time, which is making sure that we don't become stagnated by like any type of health body like the FDA.
Your federation, that's one issue, but how are you looking at marketing this to users?
As far as how we're looking at marketing it to users is starting, well, our go-to-market strategy is first establishing a location because our partners, the facilities that I've gone to that I'm now discussing partnerships with, I went to because I selected them to be, because they take in the general everyday person. These aren't research facilities per se. These provide these services at a cost, usually not covered by insurance outside of like, we'll give you a super bill. So it's gonna be a white glove app. So it's not gonna be something that you necessarily get out of the store. It's gonna roll out and be something that's gonna cost around, again, $10,000 in total. So it's about the neural interface, brain-computer interfaces and neurosensing wearables are exploding. Since I started orbiting this space in 2017 to present day, there is, you have your pick of different, BCIs and neural tracking, you have neuromodulation devices, you have a lot of things that have come down in cost. Their quality is up for debate, but the fact remains that there's a lot of interest in wearable technology in general. So it's going to be like I have a Withings scale that tells you your vascular age and measures it has ECG and is FDA approved. So in that same way that we can see our weight, we can see our heart information, our blood oxygen, we should be able to see our brain data as well. So we're filling a need that's already has a lot of visceral interest. So, but it's gonna start local, it's gonna start heavily localized and certainly be a high-end app. So that requires somewhat of a investment of folks who have that type of money to apportion for their own personal medical research.
Those types of companies exist now where you can go in and actually pay, $5,000-$10,000 and they do a scan of your whole body.
Right, QBio. Yeah, that's a QBio's one. There's I think Next Clinics, I think it's called. They do cerebral peptides and a full body scan. QBio is about $4,000 out of pocket. And really cool. So there's a lot of options, but again, then they were backed by Andreessen Horowitz, which is how I heard about it. A16Z, a pal of mine there that referred me. So it's gonna start out that way, and then we're gonna Tesla it. We're gonna bring the cost. Same thing that happened with home automation and wearables. It's like you just bring the cost down. You have Apple HomeKit now. Back then, having home automation, back 10, 15 years ago, home automation was exclusively for the wealthy. Then they figured out how to democratize it and make it into a commodity everybody can access. It's exactly what we're doing with neural data because it's a really hot space. I mean, TMZ is covering Neuralink, and if you think about that, like yes, a lot of what Neuralink's doing is rebranding existing science with an Elon Musk sheen on top of it, but in the reality, it's a necessary evil because now more people are. And that's the whole thing, like, oh, AI can read your thoughts. So we need that BS hype because what's gonna happen is, people are gonna talk, Joe Rogan's gonna be like, yo, man, I'm high and it's gonna be crazy, they're gonna read your minds. And we need that because then the conversation gets started around it, even though it's about a lot of not like just improbable and unpractical applications of this tech, but that's gonna raise the general populace's attention, raise awareness. And that alludes to more funding because investors want to be on top of the latest and greatest. That's going to pop off, and then that has a cyclical effect. That has a scorpion tail too, but it's just all about timing. So that's the pocket we're hoping to be in. The other component is your own hardware. Now the intention is in our MVP to use these. However, the idea is for it to be hardware agnostic. So regardless, some folks use Whoop, some people use Apple Watch, some folks use Oura Ring. Again, this will require strategic partnerships, which we've already forged. And that helps the adoption of these things, because now you have an app that has a very important application. Like, for example, the QBio, there was nothing telling me I needed to go do QBio, but now they've discovered, hey, you have a flare in your shin, let's make sure it's not bone cancer. So just in catching that, it's probably not, obviously. I have a focused MRI on my shin at Stanford on the 31st. Probably not bone cancer, but when the hell would I ever have come upon that discovery? So it's like, this could be potentially life-saving already. And it's just like, okay, that's very interesting. I never would have checked my shin, who would? So, and I never would have, this twisted insurance system would never have, said, oh, you're pondering that maybe something's wrong. Let's just cover a couple of full body MRIs for you and 12 panels of extensive blood work and see what's up. I'll be long since gone before that determination's ever made. So the idea is to make, so you have these siloed things, you have these wearables, and then you have the wearables telling you, well, this is your sleep score. This is your activity level. And, the more you invest in it, like the Oura Ring, for example, the more you understand it, there is somewhat of a learning curve, but you're seeing how the app is presenting information to you, whereas this is allowing you to export all the raw data from your Oura Ring, from your Apple Watch, from your Neurosity Crown, just like in the example of Neurosity Crown in OpenBCI, you have your unfiltered or filtered raw EEG going and it being dumped via Python into your IDE. So then you have the raw to your terminal, and you have the raw numerical data to go off of, and then you have an intelligent assistant. You have a neuroscientific language foundation model that is going to make sense of all that. Whereas, and it makes sense of it in context. So you have, you may have excess cortisol because we noticed in a rested state, your heart rate is up, and your heart rate's not only up, but you have you seem to have a pattern from your SPECT scans of hyperactive basal, like excessive basal ganglia activity, and then on top of it, your vitals tend to vacillate even in rested states. Look into that, and the idea is that you're going to be able to form insights into that and be given information that you can then go to a doctor with. I mean, when I walked into Stanford with my neural data already, that's where this all comes from. You're going, the medical system are the gatekeepers to this information. So that's the whole idea, is that we're completely removing them as middlemen, and you just have you have unrestricted access to your own information, and it's regurgitated to you in a way that makes sense and that you can do something about it. That's essentially what we're trying to do, and democratize your own personal neurology, your own neural
I can
wellness.
see lots of other uses for this technology, like people with, what is that when you snore at night?
Apnea, sleep apnea, yes.
Yeah,
That's one of the modalities we're experimenting with, a brain monitored sleep study.
Yeah.
It's poly something, I forget the exact name of the procedure escapes me.
that's another application, that's definitely big, that's big.
Yeah, well, the idea is that this is where this all comes from on a personal level. Obviously, for obvious reasons, I can't shoot from the hip like this, but in being misdiagnosed and told all of that spin, I was like, and then finding out that it's really impossible to sue Big Pharma and seeing how dysfunctional and calloused Big Pharma is from the inside, I was like, if we have something like this, and I establish a baseline, I go to a psychiatrist and who in many cases already knows what they're going to prescribe you before they even hear your case, because they're incentivized to do so, because a lot of them are have become, not through their own intention. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm saying that this system, it incentivizes
Medication.
slinging certain medications. Yeah, so they're legal drug dealers. It's a very real thing. I mean, look at the Netflix. I mean, if you look, that's not made up what Purdue Pharma did. There's a scene in the pill. What is it? It was Matthew Broderick, and it's about Purdue Pharma. It's on Netflix. Painkiller. There's a scene where a doctor kicks a girl. He's like, you're a drug dealer with a ponytail. I'm not prescribing my patients. It's when they were spinning OxyContin. So it's the same thing. So it's going to be a whole different game, I imagine, to cut through the veil of academia, to cut through the veil of health tech and med tech and say, here's my baseline. Imagine telling a physician this, who's giving you something and really like, you got to take it and you check off, you're definitely bipolar. I mean, if you've seen what I've seen and are aware enough to like be like, this is definitely somebody. How have you made this determination about something that took an entire life to develop, 30 years to develop, and you're using a questionnaire, and now because you checked enough boxes on the questionnaire, you're suggesting I take a extremely powerful mind-altering psychotropic medication for something you suspect I have. There's a dead end to try to get neural scans to back any claims or to possibly to come up against any of your deductions. And then there's no blood test I can take for bipolar disorder or ADD or schizoaffective disorder. So I've established my own neurological baseline and neurochemical baseline. This is how my brain is right now. I'm gonna take your medicine and I'm gonna continue to measure my neuro goings on. And if I see perturbations that match odd behaviors or adverse side effects that worsen my condition, while you experiment with different doses and whatever, and something happens to me, this is the ground truth, and this is the affected truth. And now I have my idea is now I have a framework to come after you with from malpractice. Because if you're just giving me medicine I don't need, that's going to have adverse effects like, take lithium, and if you kill yourself, we'll just lower the dose. That's where we're at right now. And it's like that's what I would love to ask them. And when these folks end up doing things to themselves, like Ozempic, there's a big thing about these semaglutide medications and that they're causing suicidal ideation. So then you have what? You have the studies. And who funds the studies? The companies that are selling the medicine or their subsidiaries, essentially. It's just such a game that so the only recourse is to take responsibility and ownership of your own information. So, and self-education is gonna be built into this. That's the beauty of LLMs.
I love this.
So,
As you were talking, one other thing came to mind. The way corporations work is classical. If they don't have what you have, they're gonna try and buy it. If you don't sell it to them, they're gonna try and copy it. And if they can't copy it, they're gonna run you out of business.
yeah.
What are your, safes to insulate yourself while you develop this? Because you're talking about disrupting I don't know, maybe $500 billion a year industry.
What was that? That's a beautiful question. I'm very glad you asked that. I was hoping someone would ask that actually. So you're entirely correct. And the strategy that our advisors and people we've consulted that are lifers in these domains, both on the business end and on the neuroscience academia end, have said, keep investors out of your hair for as long as possible. So that's why I had a lot of Black Dream AI was conceived in 2017 to be an adversarial machine intelligence research. I let the idea linger until I actually formally founded and established it as a company in 2023. And now that's sort of being absorbed into Limina AI for what we have so far. So we're keeping investors out of our hair. We're playing the academia game in the sense that Foothill comes into that, because Foothill it's a beautiful coincidence that Foothill's state run and doesn't have as much of the razzmatazz, has a lot of freedoms where you have these top shelf institutions. They have certain hierarchy that and pecking orders that need to be, that they become an institution of bureaucracy themselves. Whereas research needs to be done, it needs to be done with some sort of significant pace, because otherwise you're just in this echo chamber of papers and garnering funding for more lab space and more I'm completely removed from that world and informed by that world with my co-founder who has to remain anonymous, unfortunately, but vetted by a very good friend of mine, Dr. Sharina Rice, who is a leading neuroscientist herself. And the beauty of that relationship is she's coming from academia. There's a huge exodus of in not just neuroscience, but in academia in general. People want to ship things. People want innovation to get to the end user. And that seldom happens. You hear about all these studies on the news, you hear about, and it's a lot of, I don't know any other better word for that. It's like intellectual masturbation at that point, because it's just, it never amounts to anything real world. And that's where folks from academia are coming from. I'm coming from the Silicon Valley world of, global deployments and delivery and all that other stuff. And I know all the perils and pitfalls there and all of the stupidity that goes on with that. So we're coming together and we want to do something that actually reaches the market and makes an impact. And we want to do it in a way that's not just a GPT-4 wrapper. It's not just a novelty product. So it's going to take time, which is why we don't want to make garbage. We don't want to make a Me Too product. And we really, really have to quadruple down on quality, user experience, because most of neurotech is still very user hostile. No one's gonna go walk around with an EEG cap. No one's gonna go, and then if you want these more discrete form factor biosensing products or wearables, you have a lot of signal noise issues. So there's a lot of room to innovate, and it's gonna be something that takes time, a lot of R&D, a lot of research and testing. So we can't be sandbagged by everything that comes with academia either. So keeping investors out of our hair, we're leveraging mostly non-diluted funding and bootstrap financing. We're incredibly lean, and we're sort of interested in putting this idea to the test to how much can we automate? Sam Altman said that they see by 2030 that unicorns are going to be 5 people.
Well, I mean,
So we're gonna start putting that to the test.
I'm sure you've seen automation in the pharma and biotech industry already.
Well, that's the whole beauty of me coming from AI/ML, and then you have other folks coming from neuroscience, is that we already have everything we need. And I've been across the board from engineering to design to development and everything in R&D myself, that I've kind of run through the garden. I don't have an orthodox resume at all. I've run through the garden of Apple and Salesforce and ServiceNow and the Department of Defense via federal contractors. I've just kind of done this seemingly chaotic, sporadic jumping from one thing to the other, when in reality, not only was I talent scouting, and that's how we have the body of folks involved with this that we have, but I was also seeing different team sizes, seeing how different teams work, learning different stacks. I totally, and I pride myself on this, and I pride myself on very few things, I did my own thing my own way. So I did not sit at a big tech company and say, okay, I'm gonna wait, I'm a level 1, I'm gonna wait till I get 11.3. I'm gonna take the level 3. You're gonna give me the level 3 engineering position, and then I'm gonna use that to get another position. And that's what I've been doing. So and it's at a great time, because maybe 5 years ago people would say, wow, that's not the most ethical. But now when we see the real MO of these companies and what they're doing to people with all these layoffs and reductions and leaving people out to dry, people aren't so touchy and feely anymore. The few people that have been like, that method's really unethical, one person from Google was then, I think, laid off on maternity leave after working for the company 12 years. So I was like, how's your loyalty working out for you now? So, and then I'm not gloating over it, I'm just saying, like, let's be honest, it's a dog eat dog thing, we're in this to win.
One thing
so.
about that mindset is that it is more in parallel with the startup ecosystem, how it works in reality. Because you have to wear multiple hats. You have to understand the complete system life cycle. You have to understand how to build the right team for the right products. And those are skills that you only get if you're in the workforce. Because they don't teach that in academia.
Yeah, there are certainly disconnects, and I don't wanna say like I'm coming against academia, our whole thing is to play, we have grants that we are in the running for, so we're really heavily leveraging non-diluted funding. Because we need total dominion, and I think that we can pull it off. We're punk rock, not corporate rock. So if there's a good way to phrase it all, that's what we're doing. We're truly trying to be the renegades. We're not listening to any rules. We're not trying to, build quick and break things. None of that. We're building something good. And it doesn't matter how long it takes because there's still a lot of money flying around. I mean, when you look at like the companies that were touted to be unicorns, I mean, look at Theranos and Juicero, which were complete. Both of them were like absolute vaporware, but like, look what happened. I mean, billions raised between both of them, and for what? When you just see the who gets funding, ChatGPT for flower delivery, all those companies got wiped out. The companies that came after November 2022, 98% of them are gone already.
Yeah. It's the same process that happened with, Web 1.0, Web 2.0,
Yeah,
3.0.
yeah, it's happening now with humanoid robotics.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. There's a great tweet from George Hotz, who hails from the exact same county of New Jersey that I do. He's the founder of Comma AI, was the first person to jailbreak an iPhone at 16. I'm a stan of his. And he just made a great post because he called the autonomous vehicle scam economy. And now he said this, he's a great post a couple, like last week or two ago, like investors haven't learned their issue. Now they're just channeled their junkiness from self-driving autonomous vehicles, level 5 autonomy, which was a scam, to humanoid robots, which in ways are even more complicated than creating a self-driving car, because that's an even larger open domain. Now you have innovations in AI ML that are really gonna create that increase in application and functionality for open domain robotics, like liquid time constant neural networks, for example, that need time series data, temporal data to and can adapt after being trained initially. But you're gonna see that too. You're gonna see that like sudden sharp increase in functionality. And it's gonna be like, oh my God, autonomous sentient robots are coming. And then the investors are all gonna pour in. And then in the end, the only person that loses is gonna be the consumer. And the investors that don't have, that put too much of their portfolio into it and get wiped out. The big guys are gonna continue the pump and dump and the smash and dip. As they always have. But a lot of people, the same people are gonna get wiped out, the little guys. The stuff that I've seen, it's incredible that it's a very weird thing, because they're like, oh, it's the hype. It's like it's not hype, it's fraud. But for some reason, when it comes to emerging technology, the semantics can be switched, and it can be called like hype. It's just like, you're lying. That's what you're doing. You're lying.
That's basically it.
You're reselling someone else's shit. So like that's where we're at. I mean, it's everywhere. It's in the AI ethics. It's in legislature. I was just saying, we just went and we have a AGI house. We got called into a thing. I had a dialogue with Senator Wiener's office about this bill that they're trying to impose that's heavily lobbied by big tech to kill open source development. So when you have that, these holding actions, that's what you're gonna ultimately have to deal with. So stealth and keep staying out of investors' hair, because if you get, Sand Hill Road behind you, that's great. If you wanna, pay yourself a nice salary and hope to make it to the ocean, but then you have to deal with all of that other stuff. You have the visibility and the fame, which can turn on quickly, and then you can lose control. So
That's the first thing that's gonna happen.
yeah, so we're staying bootstrapped. We're so like, I have, through all the companies I worked for, anyone of value before I would leave, I'd go in, meet who I needed to meet, talk to who I needed to talk to, and maintain rapport with any high caliber individuals that I found. And believe me, in big tech, they're few and far between. They're very few and far. There is such an epidemic of non-work going on that no one wants to talk about because, especially in a layoff climate and a recession, no one's gonna wanna say they're not doing anything. There's a lot of people not doing anything for money. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. So we have to keep it in close to the chest and maintain complete dominion and autonomy over everything. Otherwise, this will be like torn up and sold for scraps. And I've seen it happen too many times to too many people. It's not gonna happen to me.
Makes sense?
So our development roadmap is the natural language interface, which you just saw. Then the core app itself. So you have the web and mobile client. It's gonna start out being web, given the density, the information that you need to digest. This is gonna inform a small language model. Right now, we're looking into small language models with a liquid neural network architecture over your traditional transformer architecture, because as fate would have it, EEG is template data. So you need time series data that's constant and consistent to have these liquid neural networks to work. So that's what we're exploring. So that's where the intellectual property comes. So we're gonna have a whole portfolio of patents. And we're gonna be building up our IP and building up the product. That's what we're doing. We don't need to hire. I have everyone that I could ever need on tap through my personal network and our collective. We have a board of a second to none group of advisors on this, which you'll see in a second. And the small language model is going to be, the beauty of small language models is that they can be deployed far easier on edge devices, like a neural interface. So I've been invited by Harvard and MIT to do a residency at their joint innovation lab in Cambridge. That's beginning in June, to essentially build this SLM. So it's it's the augmentation lab. It's for neuro wearables, AI native neuro wearables. So that's gonna be what I'm gonna be building at Harvard. And ultimately, we wanna build a bespoke BCI. And where a small foundation model comes into play here is EEG optimization for low count, high noise neural interfaces. So the idea is, if you don't have the cranial coverage area that you'd like, and you're not gonna have because no one's gonna wear an entire cap on their head all day, all the time, but if you make it discrete and you make it sort of a luxury item, like what Apple has done with the watch, what companies like Apple have done with the watch, or a ring, for example, if you make something discrete that can be worn and not be inhibitory for day to day. Right, exactly. So you have a hat, you can have something. So it's all about experimenting with, if we place the electrodes. Apple just filed a patent that I was just talking to someone on LinkedIn about late last night, where AirPods are gonna have be able to measure your vitals and neural data. So they're biosensing AirPods. Now, immediately, myself and another a neuroscientist were like discussing, there's the ethic conversation that I like to sidestep, because ethics are an illusory thing, in the sense that not that I'm exhibiting any type of moral turpitude here. It's the fact that I'm an accelerationist at heart. So what's going to happen eventually is, if it's deemed actionable and ROI generating enough, it's going to be packaged eventually into something so convenient we're going to ask for it. So I tend to just kind of avoid the ethical arguments. I got straight to, is any type of meaningful EEG data going to be able to be captured and parsed from your ears? To where, like, given the probability of noise artifacts, different ear canal shapes, it's really up for debate.
Yeah.
So I get that they patented it. Now, is the patent actionable in a productization sense? Who knows?
Right.
So we're trying to figure that out. Now, an on-device a foundation model that occurs on device to optimize that EEG, saying, well, certain things there's synaptic fire, there's electrical activity going on here. The probability that in this region, X, Y, and Z could be occurring, that's something we're also like just like a guesstimation to make a artificially complete picture without having to have as many EEG, having to have as many electrodes placed. We're seeing if that's something that LLMs can compensate for in a meaningful way. But the idea is you need to recess the actual interface and hardware itself to where it's discrete and the user forgets that they have it. Ideally. That's how these things are going to be democratized, and that's how you're going to reach critical mass adoption. But this is our roadmap. And also the byproduct is, aside from these, is that now we're going to have, there's some other things in the pipeline that are in my personal 10-year plan of, we want people to get comfortable submitting their granular, intimate neurophysiological data. Something as granular and intimate as their neurophysiological data to an app. And that offers a lot of potentiality into other realms for other products. And I think that that's going to be really important because if we one day want to build a true everything app in the truest sense of that word and that phrase, then people are going to have to be comfortable submitting everything, like what goes on in China with WeChat.
And I think that's why I mentioned the what they call the snoring thing again?
Apnea.
Sleep apnea, because they already wear those straps, the mask, the whole nine.
Yeah, that's super convenient though.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
I have a close relative that has to wear that, and it's like very, it's a whole production.
Yeah,
So
and it's working for them.
right, and then now there's like it works, but it's like, is that just a Band-Aid solution? That's what I mean. And then there's big money in selling those kits, and now everyone has sleep apnea, and that's where we're at again.
Look, I went to the doctor to get tested for sleep apnea. I don't have sleep apnea.
That's what I'm saying.
Guess what happened?
What?
I have sleep apnea.
Right. And then you get pushback, and see, and I piss doctors off pretty bad because they'll be like, oh, someone's been searching Dr. Google is the classical answer, and I'm like, oh, someone learned from Pfizer Institute and GlaxoSmithKline Academy, because that's where you got your information, from very biased, funded sources. So so the additional benefits of this though, we want to universalize and standardize neuroscience-backed diagnoses. SPECT scans, when you see, now, the debate, and you have to always consider the sources. Well, there could be some over-promising with SPECT scans. It's like, that's feedback I've gotten. I'm like, yeah, much better your questionnaire. Much better you checking off a couple boxes. That's much more solid science, 100%. Like, if you really listen to what you're being told, the gaslighting that goes on at like a massive global scale, like civilization-wide, it's staggering. It really is. So we want to standardize that. Just from what I yielded from my SPECT scan, it's incredible. Where I had a suspicion I had certain neuroreceptor deficiencies, like in GABA and dopamine, and specifically GABA. That's what we found. If you look at my SPECT scans that I used in the demo, very active, hyperactive thalamus and basal ganglia basal ganglia and thalamus, and those need to regulate themselves appropriately. Those regions, they like fiend for GABA. So my suspicions were correct, and look at like that insight. So now it's just like, oh, that's why if I consume little bits of alcohol, I have really bad reactions and I get anxious and I start like even shaking as if I've been a chronic drinker for years and years. But from 15 minutes after a shot, I'm trembling. It's because, and I was like, there's gotta be something up. And just so happens that ethanol essentially takes the place of GABA in your brain, which is your inhibitory calming neurotransmitter. And that's how fast that works for me. So that now I put the pieces together that I have an actual GABA deficiency, and it's not speculation, it's not a maybe. So take Adderall, it's none of that, it's in a scan. And the best part is going to neuropsychiatrists or even general psychiatrists, and when they start trying to say, no one's disputed me yet. I'm like, here it is, here's my brain, I am actually neurodivergent, because they have hundreds of thousands of other scans that they compare in their own corpus. So they pulled up my scan, my brain scans are most closely aligned with adult ASD, adult autism, high functioning autism, high level IQs, and schizophrenia. And now we have a body of information to compare that to, and that was done manually. That could also be done with a large language model, or a large vision model, or a large multimodal model. But look at that insight. No, how would I ever have known that if I just listened to doctors like, you might have this, you might have that. You know, take medicine and we'll tune it. That way, and then by the time you experiment with dosing these medicines, you're already a different person. Your neurochemical your synaptic firings and your neurochemistry is already altered. So now you're too deep into the weeds to ever go, retrace your steps fully. So that's what we're trying to get people to be proactive about their brain wellness and their neural health and goings on, I shouldn't say health, because then again, you get into that world and then the FDA will be all over you before you don't want to get shut down and whatever. So you have to play the semantic game, and then back to that earlier question, you have to kind of play the game of academia, but you have to pick your institutions carefully. And leverage your resources effectively. And do so in a way that you maintain control, because this can easily be broken up, or you can have a big firm that is watering over the fact that you're going to have a corpus of very intimate physiological information of users, which is that's the new gold essentially. It's what everyone's going after.
And you fundamentally threaten their business model.
Well, that was when people said, "What's your metric for success?" It's that big pharma tries to kill me. That's my metric for success. So.
Just wanna be a little weary on time.
Okay.
1:20, so there's 10 minutes left to
Sure.
do whatever we feel like doing.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just finish through the slide. So again, you have the neural paper trail. You have your ground truth, your baseline that you yourself have and can understand and access in the app, and then you can see it, how it changes and vacillates over whatever age, with medication regimens, supplementation, etc. Variations in sleep, trial and error if you're doing that. And then additional research, this would enable that. Further adjacent areas like deep learning and neuromorphic computing, which, pardon me, allergies guys, I'm not sick. Neuromorphic computing is a new and emerging computation architecture being pioneered at places like Intel and IBM. IBM has True North, that's their experimental neuromorphic chip. Intel has HoloPoint, which is their system, and their chip is called Logi. And they're on the second iteration of that too. They just released a press junket, so there's a lot going on in the space. Just very quietly, so I think it's going to also see its day where it booms as being really important, because it offers excuse me, oh god, it offers parallel processing, which is the promise of quantum ML and quantum computing, but it does so without all of the overhead and hardware requirements that comes with quantum. Although they are different in certain ways, I see them as eventually converging themselves, quantum and neuromorphic. But neuromorphic has a lot of potential because it's much more, it's computation that performs much closer to how our brains execute organically and processes things organically. So this is the founding team. We have a pool of 1099 resources that are second to none in ML and accelerated deep learning, LLMs, you name it. And so that way we have a very lean cap table. And we have some really good people involved. Particularly Eugene, who is a neuroscientist turned lawyer. Thank you. Oh my God, dude. Who's a neuroscientist turned lawyer, so and our good friend Shamala, she oversees 120 foundation models at NVIDIA and works directly with Jensen Yang. And then, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Dr. Sharina Rice, my cohort on the other side of the spectrum coming from academia. She is part of, she works for a Still in Stealth major neuroscience play focusing on neuromodulation for anxiety mitigation. I'm actually part of that study. And I have plenty of people to tell me that this idea is stupid if it was stupid. No one has said that yet. They're like, this is a very needed thing. And the mutual appreciation and then the neuroscience community welcoming me as a self-taught layman, going into neurotech, just goes to show that there's a lot of room for innovation in the space and bringing things to market. I think everyone at this point is fed up with the stagnation inherent in the research domain, and they really wanna move things and get things to people. And again, neurotech, even medical grade, is very user hostile. I currently use a device called the Monarch device. Someone having fun with the naming for that. And it's called the Monarch device. It's a neuromodulator, really for kids in ADD, of course. So insurance didn't cover it because I'm not a child with ADHD. I'm an adult with ADHD. And so they gave it to me, and I wear it every night. But it's a very 1980s experience. It's a black and white panel. There's no off button. It's not something you want to use, and that's where we have to get consumer neurotech. And this is just a quick about. So we're bootstrapped. I've gone over everything. So I'm based at NASA Ames Research Park with a satellite office at NASA Kennedy Space Center in the Astronaut Memorial Building, though we don't really have much going on there. I was doing some government work at the time. I was in Florida. And this is our contact, but I thank everybody for attending today. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
There is one question in the chat, Eros. At what age do you recommend someone determine their baselines?
Immediately. It doesn't matter the age. This is a new avenue. So it's, again, I'd be remiss if we determined an age. There is no age. If you're breathing, it's time. I mean, when was the best age to start tracking your heart rate? So the sooner the better is the blanket answer.
Thank you for the great presentation. One question you mentioned about the hardware agnostic, when it comes to the device. I know most of the computation happening on the cloud and your LLM model, everything on the outside. You think all these devices, tiny devices, have resources to handle your data coming to them, processing power and the resource? Yeah.
Well, when you look at like Jetson, and you look at what's going on in Edge, yeah, I mean, it's a rapidly there's a lot of workarounds and there's a lot of room to execute for sure. I think so. The more narrow your application and more narrow your use cases, the more probability these are going to be able to cater to exactly that. Federated learning, I mean, I think that was initially announced at Google I/O as a thing in 2017, and now NVIDIA is all about it. And once NVIDIA gets behind something, forget it. So that's where everything's going. And it's been a long time coming, where we want these things on device for bandwidth and latency bandwidth optimization, and that way you don't have the throughput issues when dealing with the cloud and connectivity issues. And that's what's going to have to happen, because you're not going to be able to monitor your brainwaves, for example, in every place that happens to have Wi-Fi or connectivity. So you're going to need to have certain computation on device. Now that can be compartmentalized and segmented, and it can be, I'm imagining the end result are gonna be hybrid arrays where some's done in the cloud, some things are processed in the cloud, some things are processed on device, some things are just captured on device and then sent to the cloud. There's a lot of different options to explore. And again, we're very much still in discovery. We're happy to do the Figma thing. Figma, when they started in a dormitory, they spent 3 years in stealth. They didn't launch to Series A. I'm 100% fine with doing that. And again, leveraging non-diluted funding, institutions like Foothill, who have resources and the need and the need for folks to do real work in their facilities. Sharina, Dr. Rice and I are both visiting scholars here. So we intend to also, of course, work in Foothill as a valuable component to all this. But I certainly think that we have a lot of tricks up our sleeve to how to make this work.
What infrastructure are you building your product on?
Right now, we're for the MVP GPT-4o.
Okay.
That's the API we're using. But that, as I was explaining to these gentlemen earlier, we are using SOTA models currently, but seeing essentially to assess where they fall short. Because it's still not sacrosanct and foolproof that they can read radiology scans effectively. And there's a lot of nuance in radiology scans that requires human inference. So that's why we're gonna see like, where do SOTA models that are open domain, how do they work? What our intuition says is we're gonna have to construct our own neuroscientific model, which is why I'm starting to do that at Harvard. So.
This is a side question. What do you think of the competition between the current LLMs and Mamba?
Current LLMs and who?
And the Mamba state memory processing instead of using the neural network.
Mamba, the state processing, we don't, that's not something
Okay.
we're knowledgeable enough to
Okay.
speculate on at this point, but I'd have to look into.
Yeah, it's just a new way of doing the modeling using states instead of neural networks.
I mean, yeah, right now we're so early in the discovery phase of we're just making our MVP. We've applied to YCOM. So we have some demo days. We applied to 50/50 by 50 years. So right now we have the SOTA. We're on the SOTA run for the MVP. We're just building out our MVP. So when again, all of the bespoke solutions that come into play are going to come after MVP phase. So right now, there's a lot of structuring. There's again structuring everything so that we can be lean. Like we can prototype this because of again, I love the title. Apple gave me Design Engineer because that's a very appropriate way to put it. I have technical acumen. I hail from technical design, but then I became a programmer and developer by accident. It was ultimately to say like the more you know on the technical end, that'll inform the design. I didn't mean to become an actual engineer or ever get that title, but I did. However, however misguided it may have been or inappropriate it could have been, but that's what they called me, level 3 engineer. So I took it and ran with it. But that's where we're at right now.
So we're just about out of time. I wanna, first of all, thank Eros very much for coming in. Thank you to the audience for all the great questions and conversation with Eros. At this point, we're gonna end the presentation, but certainly if you wanna stick around and mingle and have some more snacks and drinks, certainly welcome to do that. So thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. Thank you once again, Eros.